like a natural refrigerator, you know. And also, years ago, this was kind of a meeting place, I'm told, where the Indians, all around the valley used
Now
to
we're
come in.
talking about the sandstone cave down here
Yeah,
by the
yeah, yeah.
Greyhound Depot. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah,
And
and they all used
speaking
to
is
gather.
is one of our interesting local historians, Wynne Pilling. And in this group of discussees, disgusteds, are
Yeah.
Gordon Ingles, John Sandus, and Wynne Pilling, and it's January 13th,
14.
14th,
Yeah,
1986.
86.
And Gordon just remembered something he forgot.
I had 11 o'clock appointment with my lawyer in
Oh boy. Shh, this is on tape. We'll just edit that, okay?
Uh,
Now, what about the
But
this cave now? When was it made? Was it a natural cave?
it was a natural cave, and apparently at one time the river used to flow like down where I live.
Yeah.
All that was
Smell
all
Queen
old,
Avenue.
old riverbed. You
Oh,
see.
what moved it over to the other side there?
Well, no
What is time for?
time,
It was
time,
bigger then.
and pardon
The
me.
river was probably much larger.
No, they changed. Don't you know that rivers automatically change the beds, John?
Meander around.
Yeah, they changed the beds.
Well, you see, like in the heavy spring runoffs, there's always a certain amount of boulder material and gravel and what have you, and according to the currents, you see, it can pile up, and that will divert the river. And they claim that this was a backwash from the river many years ago. You see, now this would be before the 18. When did Allison, John Paul Allison, come to? Was it 1895? Something.
What was before that?
Was it before that
I
time?
believe so, yeah.
Well, the cave was there at that time, because I remember talking to Mrs. McDermott.
Yeah?
And she was a granddaughter of John Paul Allison,
Yeah, right.
and she recalled the cave being there
Uh-huh.
so the river had receded, if you want to call it that, into its regular channel as it is at the present time.
Well, did the Indians use that as a place to rest on the trail, or some place to?
Yes,
Get out of
and
the
sort of a meeting place too.
I'll bet there were some interesting carvings and stuff in there too, the paintings. And
Well,
stuff.
I
Or
don't.
would it work on sandstone?
It
they
was
didn't.
sandstone, and you see, sandstone has
Crumbly.
crumbly fact, and it would crumble away.
Yeah.
Just even the weather itself would just
Right.
crumble it.
But didn't the
And-
brewery enlarge the cave? Did they
No,
dig it?
no,
It was always big enough.
it was always big enough.
What's
And
that concrete on the back there for, Wynne? There's some concrete in the back there now. It's
That's
still.
probably the back wall of the brewery.
Oh, is that where they built the roof?
Oh yeah,
over?
that was the retaining wall for the brewery.
Oh, keep
that.
the hill from moving.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But the cave was a little bit further over.
more towards your place.
Yeah,
Your
yeah.
direction, yeah.
Yeah, all they did was just board up the front of the
Is that
cave,
all, yeah?
you see,
Put doors on it.
and put doors on and
Yeah.
locks, and
Yeah.
yeah.
Huh.
And
And
well,
they
it was
had
just.
3 boxcars.
This is
three
what they
box-
tell me: 3 boxcar loads of beer they could store in there, and it was an ideal place right beside the railroad. You
Yeah,
see,
Yeah,
and natural storage.
yeah. Where did they get the water for the brewery? Right out of the river?
Well,
Or
from
was
the waterworks, the Princeton Waterworks.
Oh,
A fellow by the name of Murray used to run the waterworks, and I remember when we first incorporated, we dickered with Murray
uh-huh.
for the village to purchase the waterworks. You see,
And then they brought in by boxcar. They brought in the grain, right? For
yeah.
the mash.
Yeah, and it was just practically across the street, and everything was an ideal
Right.
setup. It was just too bad that the brewery, was ever taken away from here, because
They made a good product too, as I understand.
they did.
It won prizes at the exhibition.
That's right. That's
in
right.
Ontario, didn't it?
That's right. Yeah,
it
yeah.
won.
Many places.
Yeah, because when the brewery here went,
Yeah, George
under the
Chisler
hop
was a
farm
good
and
brew
all
master,
Was
you know,
he was the one.
and his son followed in his
Uh-huh.
footsteps too.
And he was good too.
because
Yeah.
when the brewery here went,
Yeah.
the hop farms in Lowell went too, so they must have been getting the hops from Lowell.
The pardon?
The hop farms in Lowell, when the brewery here closed down the hop farms in Lowell.
It would have an effect. Yeah.
So I
yeah.
guess they must have been getting their hops from Lowell or something.
Uh-huh.
See, Gordon is from the Lillooet area.
Oh, yeah.
He's
Yeah,
one
it
of
would
these
happen.
Lillooet
One
boys.
thing
Now, there's another
snowballs,
joke, too.
you know, from one to the other, right?
Lillooet,
But,
good, we've got a good sense of humor if you come.
Well, this is right, which is a good thing, you know.
These guys from down in Minnesota, they don't have a very good sense of humor.
A sense of humor is the spice of life, you know. And but speaking about the Indians, a story came to my mind that Mrs. McDermott told me about, and you know Rainbow Lake.
Sure, right out here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
A couple miles from town.
the proper name for Rainbow Lake is Tarn Lake.
Tarn.
Tarne, Tarn
Oh,
Lake.
yeah.
Uh-huh. And apparently the Indians, the Similkameen Indians, were kind of a warlike nature, you see, and they had a battle with some of the other Indians that were local here, and they killed one of these Indians and dumped the body in Tarn Lake, you see, and Mrs. McDermott asked me if I would take photographs of Tarn Lake, and she explained to me where the body had been thrown into the lake, you see. So I took 3 snapshots of different places of the area where this Indian was found in the lake, and the picture is in one of her books.
Oh, yeah.
She published 2 books, you know, and the first book I bought it from her, and then the second book, for helping her, like with these pictures and what, she gave me a complimentary copy of her second book.
What were the titles of her books?
The first one was the Times. Sure. The second one was When Grandma Was a Girl,
Oh, yeah.
you see. And the first one, The Life and Times
Of
of John Paul Allison,
That's
was
what I
the
was going
first
to
one.
say. John Paul Allison.
John
was
Paul
part
Allison,
of
yeah,
the title.
yeah.
Yeah.
And she had some marvelous stories to tell.
Mhm.
Apparently, their place where they used to live is where Thomas's place, you know,
Mhm, that big flat up there.
the big flat in
yeah,
there.
yeah, that beautiful field.
And there was one year they had a heavy runoff
Oh, yeah.
in the spring,
Yeah.
and it took the ice or logs or whatever it was at the time just jammed right out and took their barn out and everything, you see.
Mhm.
And Mrs. McDermott was saying how the Indians helped them at that time.
Rebuilt.
She said, yeah, she said if it hadn't have been for the Indians at that time, they would have been hard put to,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know, to reestablish. But the Indians did help them
Yeah.
so many ways.
Actually, they were quite. The Indians were quite gracious as far as all these newcomers coming in, you know, and helping
Oh, yes.
them out and stuff.
Yes, when you
I
stop
mean,
to think, coming into their area
If
and
it
their
could have
territory.
stopped at, say, a reasonable number, instead of being
Yeah.
flooded.
Yeah,
Well, it's not only that there though, John, is I think what it was is the Indian finally saw that his land was being gone and he
Well, that's
decided
it,
to
yeah.
fight back. Eh?
Yeah, one
Because they took
settler
the
here
best
and one
land, yeah.
there wouldn't make much difference. But to have hundreds of them come in,
yeah.
then their animals disappear because they, you know, the food supply is gone.
Yeah, so they started taking our, you know, the cattle and
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Yeah. Mind you can understand the
You see
feelings
the settlers too, though.
of the Indians today, you know, because
well,
after all, they were the original.
Well, they're the original Canadians.
They were original North Americans, as a matter of fact,
Yeah,
you
like
know.
you want to say either Americans or Canadians, that was the original.
And just put yourself
Yeah,
in
we're
the
all
same
foreigners.
position as they were, and someone come in and take
Well, just
over,
just
you
say
know,
it's Russian started walking over the North Pole. Well, what do we think? We fight like a bugger to keep them back.
yeah, yeah. And then when you try to talk business, you know, as far as land claims and land rights
They
and all
didn't
that.
believe in boundaries.
No, no.
It belonged to everybody. You didn't possess
Mhm.
the land. The land was something that you used for a while.
Yeah,
And if
Yeah,
somebody
that's
was on a
it.
piece of property that you wanted, well, you went and bumped them off and just kept on trucking.
yeah, yeah,
You know,
yeah,
that was the Indians' idea. Like to them,
yeah.
like the same thing as like everybody says the Indians were scalpers. They never invented the scalp. The white man invented the scalp.
That is, they were
Because
pushed, you
what
know.
it was
yeah,
is the white
yeah.
man in the States, he used
New
to get
England.
paid for Indian scalps.
That's
Mhm.
right, New England.
Because
I
the
think,
Indian, his biggest thrill was to walk up and touch you and being his enemy to touch you and take off. That was his biggest
yeah, yeah,
thing, was to touch you and go.
yeah.
Or steal horses.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but to touch you, that
Yeah.
was the biggest thing because he could walk up and touch his enemy and still walk away from it.
That's right.
That
That's
was his
right.
biggest thrill, counting coop, eh?
And you know, I think this has actually been the Indians' downfall. They're so very complacent, you know. It amazes me, and I really admire these Indians, particularly when they're talking with the government. Now, these fellows, you know, that are negotiating with the government, their heads are on the right way, and they can talk. They know what they're talking about. They know
Very
what they
eloquent.
want.
Well, look
And
at
they know where
Chief
they should
Jan
be
George,
going.
eh? He got more done for the Indians
Um,
doing the quiet way, and then he come out of it, and then we got all these here wild extremists, eh?
Yeah.
And that's hurt them more than anything else in the world, is being so extreme.
Yeah.
If they had just
Yeah.
kept going away, Chief Jan George was going, they would have been, the land rights would have been settled down.
Yes.
Because he had it all set up with Diefenbaker with Pearson. They had set up the land claims.
Mhm. Yes.
They were going to start negotiating land claims, and then he stepped. Then the renegades took over it,
Hmm.
and that just shot the land claims all to hell.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you know,
But-
if they had, like you say, if they had been quiet and peaceful, like
Yeah.
Like-
And you notice in the negotiations, they never get riled in any way, shape, or form, and they always have the same complacent attitude. And I think this has been, you know, a detriment to them. But I don't know. I can understand and sympathize with the Indians' feelings. Yeah.
I don't follow them with Mears Island. Though. I don't follow that because the Indians on Mears Island, they were for the logging because they worked for the logging company.
Hmm.
The people that are protesting on Mears Island, they all come from Prince Rupert and Bella Bella.
Hmm.
That's where they came from, Bella Coola, Bella Bella, and Prince Rupert. That's the guys who were protesting on Mears Island over the
Yeah.
logging.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the Indians on Mears Island, I watched and they interviewed them, eh? And they said, one guy says, hell. He says, they've been logging here, he says, for over 100 years.
Yeah.
And the guy says, well, we understand that they're just taking part of it now. He says, go take a look. He says, it's all logged off. He says, and been replanted.
Yeah.
He says, it's a tree farm. He says, where they want to log, he says, it's already been logged.
Mhm.
He says, virgin timber, he says, to the people, he says, no, he says, because they don't, because it was here when they were born. But he says, it was planted by somebody before that.
Yeah.
You know, where they're logging now on Mears Island.
Because, you know, here again, in regard to this particular subject that you mentioned, the Indians look at the environment from a spiritual, you know, a spiritual standpoint
Like, I'm
of
not in
view.
favor
You
of
see?
logging the Stein River ship. I'm
Pardon me?
not in favor of them going up in the Stein River.
Yeah.
I'm not in favor of them logging
No,
the
no,
Stein.
no.
I say
well-
if they have to get logs, haul them from somewhere else. They
Mhm.
can come in by rail.
Yeah.
The rail runs right by Lytton and it runs right through Boston
But,
Bar, by the way.
Did you hear the news this morning there, where it would cost them around $50 million to go into the Stein
Yeah,
Valley?
and they want you and I as tax
Yeah.
builders to build the bloody road in there.
Yeah, and then when the road, 10 to
they'll
1,
log
when
it
the
out.
road is built, they will close it to the average
public.
individual, you know.
Yeah.
And actually, the taxpayer is paying for the, you know.
Yeah, for BC Forest Products to go in there and log it out.
Yeah, yeah.
Which
And
I don't agree with.
in effect, actually, what they're doing, they're subsidizing
Our logging.
the logging. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, but I say if they're going to go into the
But-
Stein, then make them suckers build a road.
yeah, yeah,
Why should a taxpayer build a road in there so they can go in there and massacre a watershed?
yeah, yeah.
And let's face it, it's been proven years and years before not to log off watersheds.
That's right, Gordon. Yeah, this is something that has to be. This is something that has to be. No, thank you very much, John. This is something that it has to be really considered. Uh, your whole environment, you know, has got to be considered. Your fisheries is another thing that has to be
Well, there's not that
considered.
much fishery in this time. The Stein's not really a fishery river, right?
No, but I'm just
But
speaking
I'm
in
saying
general,
that it still does
where
have
logging
fishing.
has taken place. You know,
Yeah, the environment.
in some of these streams, they, as far as the salmon run is concerned, it's just
Gone.
nil. It's just all gone. You
Yeah.
see. Now, all this has to be taken into consideration, and also the employment thing has to be considered. You know, people have to have work, and they've got to make a living.
Yeah, but when there's other logs they can log.
Pardon me.
There's other places they can log.
Oh yes. Oh yes.
Like, you know,
Yes.
their trucking logs 180 miles one way to a mill.
Yeah.
So
Well,
what difference does it make whether they're logging up by Lytton someplace, other than the Stein? Because there's other places where they can log that's not going to hurt the environment, where the environment's tumbleweeds and sagebrush anyway.
Yeah.
And they can log off that area,
Uh-huh.
and it'll go back to tumbleweeds and sagebrush, eh?
Mhm.
But I mean, they can log those areas off and haul them in there.
Mhm.
But they want to go in the Stein because she's a beautiful place. She's got nice trees in there.
Yeah. It's a great stand of timber, I understand.
Yeah,
in
well, that's
that,
what they wanna get in there
area.
for, right?
Yeah. But it's going to cost some money. Well, they're going to cost the taxpayers money.
Well,
The way it is set right
like
now.
I say, why should I build a logging road in there that I can't use
Mhm.
until they're finished with it in 30 years' time? In 30 years' time, I can use the logging road.
Mhm.
But for 30 years, I can't use that logging road.
No. Well, I remember when they put the logging
the
road
only
up Granite Creek there, up on into Badger Creek. They put in a gate at what they call the Blakeburn Creek. We call it the North Fork there, and they put in a gate there and locked it. And somebody broke the lock 2 or 3 times, I understand. And then finally they took the gate off altogether. You see.
See, it's the same way on the north end of the island. Right? But see, now that's something else I don't agree with. In 72, yeah, it was 72, just shortly after the NDP came into power. They took tree farm licenses away from the logging companies, eh? And the stumpage rates, because the logging companies were still paying stumpage on the tree farms. You know, they grew the timber, they looked after the timber, they nurtured the timber along. They still had to pay stumpage fees on it, eh?
Mhm.
But they replanted that area because they knew that in 100 years or whatever time it was for the maturity of the trees, that they'd be logging there again. They had their whole thing planned out 300 years down the road, eh?
Yes.
And then the NDP took away the tree farm license and says, no way, we're going to charge you more stumpage, and you're not getting it back, eh?
Uh-huh.
Well, part of the tree farm license thing is if I had a tree farm license, I logged that tree farm off. But after I logged it off, the first planting season, whether it be the spring or the fall, I had to replant that area.
Mhm. Yeah.
The logging companies had to replant it, eh?
Yes.
And they didn't mind replanting it because they knew so many years down the road to be harvesting that again.
Mhm. Mhm.
That's why right now we're so far behind in our reforestation.
Well, what did they claim? It takes about 50 years for a tree
50
of
years,
serviceable usage to grow back.
yeah.
Uh-huh.
But
Yeah.
like I say, up there on the island, you can see it was funny. You drive up the road, and you'll see it'll say tree farm license number such and such and such and such, and then it'll have like Macmillan, Bloedel, Canfor,
Mhm.
Crown Zellerback, or whoever it is that has the tree farm. Eh?
Yeah.
These trees will be harvested, and it gives you the year that they'll be harvested.
Yeah.
It tells you the year they were planted, who they belong to, and the year that they're harvested. Eh?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then the government said, no, we're not going to let you have your tree farm licenses anymore. As soon as you harvest your tree farm, that's it, you don't get it back. Eh? So the long companies say, well, why the hell should I plant it for somebody else to harvest it? And the government said, well, we'll replant it.
Yeah.
But they never did replant it.
No.
And now the north end of the island is so far behind.
Yeah.
And the
It's
Social
becoming
Credit-
a serious
yeah, the Social
situation.
Credit
there,
government
you know.
now, they have got lots of the north end of the island replanted now, eh? Because
Yes.
they've given back the tree farm licenses to these companies, eh?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
On the stipulation that they had to plant the first plantable season
Right. Right.
after they issued the tree farm license again. And like
Yeah.
Macmillan, Bloedel, all these big logging outfits on the coast, they all got back their original tree farms and their original tree farm licenses.
Yeah.
But the thing was that they had to reforest the first planting season. And I was up here. Oh, what was it? 2 years ago? A year ago I was on the island. A year ago, 2 years ago, right? And it was getting. They were into high gear planning then. They had ads all over the place.
You know what's the best way
People try to
to
plant
get
trees.
them to plant?
Yeah.
If they own the land. If they own the land and pay taxes on the land, they're going to plant it the minute they chop down that tree,
That's right,
because
that's
they're
right.
paying on the time
Well,
that they've got
that's
that
Well,
land.
see, John, you see, that's what the tree farm license was, eh? Like, I had a license to grow trees on this area. Okay? This is my farm. Like, okay, we'll say that tabletop out of this whole front room is my tree farm. As soon as I harvest the trees off that tree farm, I have to replant.
If I
First
want to
plant.
get any trees down the line.
No, that's part of the stipulation on the tree farm licenses. Once you harvest off your tree farm, you have to replant the first plantable season, whether it be spring or be fall.
Okay, but
But then you know
do you
down the years,
expect
so
to
many
harvest those trees
years,
again?
yeah, you get them back.
Okay, that's it. But if you got a deal where you can go in and take that land, and then it doesn't matter what happens to it later on, you know,
Yeah.
you take the
Well,
trees
see,
and then
that's where
that's
the
it.
NDP screwed up when they took away the tree farm license.
Yeah.
And they said it wasn't fair for the big companies to have these areas tied up.
Right.
But the thing was, the big companies had this area tied up, but the big companies weren't fighting over different timber sales.
Yeah.
Because they had their plots already down. Like they do like in 1905 they planted these trees. So in 1999 they'll be harvesting those trees.
Yeah.
They have their whole harvesting line.
Wynne is going to tell us about his boyhood days up in Blakeburn, and Gordy's going to listen.
We're not going to talk about tree farms for that again. That's all. We're not going to get off the beaten track again. If we get off the beaten track, we're supposed to stop.
Yeah, right. Okay.
Well, I've already recorded all this, you know. They have a record of it, and at least Mrs.
Stoneberg?
Who?
Mrs. Stoneberg, maybe?
Not Mrs. Stoneberg. No. What's her name? Really funny how a name will slip your.
Yeah, it'll come to you.
Benny Clark.
Oh, Benny.
Yeah,
Oh.
I
Benny has
recorded.
recorded some of your stories?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, I recorded quite a bit with her, and Mrs. Stenwald.
Yeah.
She was
Dorothy?
there. She was there, Dorothy.
Yeah, yeah.
The day that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Well, let's see, in Blakeburn, you were born there or not?
no, I was 12 years old
When
when I went there with my parents.
yeah.
And
And you were one of the less mischievous and well-mannered kids up there.
oh well, you
Look
just
at
have
Wynne's
to.
face.
You just have
He
to
took a
stand
deep
back.
breath there.
Yeah, we thought.
You just have to stand back and take a good look at me. You see,
Yeah,
and you
yeah,
can
yeah,
see
See
yeah.
that you're
that
good.
See, look
I'm
at those
both
eyes.
mild-mannered
There's
and,
not a bit of mischief in those. Look at them, right?
there you are. You
You
see,
see,
yeah,
See, that tells the whole story
Yeah.
right there.
Yeah. Well, Blakeburn was pretty well just for Granby coal mine, for Granby then, pretty well, wasn't it?
The Blakeburn? No, they supplied coal. They supplied all the coal needed, as a matter of fact, for the CPR and the Great Northern Railroad, you see. And then I've recorded this once before. You have it on where they raised the price of
Yeah.
coal by 25 cents a ton.
Yeah.
And then the CPR boycotted them, and also the Great Northern Railroad, they boycotted them, you see.
And that put them out of business.
Well, that was the downturn
Yeah.
for Blakeburn.
What
And-
was the coal used for besides for locomotives? Was it used for?
Well, it was strictly steam coal, and the Great Northern hotels and CPR hotels all had coal burners, you see.
Oh, and they heated their buildings.
And that's right.
Oh.
Did they have to raise the 2 bits a ton?
Well, I don't think actually they did, but Blakeburn was in a position of having, the finest. It was considered the finest steam coal on the North American continent, excuse me. And there wasn't a great amount of ash with it, and it was really, really
Hot
a
coal.
hot coal.
It used to burn the grates on everything.
Yeah, your ordinary cast iron liners, you know, in your fireboxes in your stoves, they would only last in some cases a month. And
That's a hot.
so we had a steady job at the shop cutting 3/4 plate. They give us the measurement of the box liner, you see, and we cut 3/4 plate, and it was they put these 3/4 plates on either side and the ends, and this is the way they held the.
Just to make them last
But
longer.
the next thing was the grates, the cast iron grates. You know, they were forever replacing the cast iron grates. But the advantage of the Blakeburn coal was it was, while there was a lot of ash, but it was a fine ash, you see. And when they raised the price of coal 2 bits a ton, both the CPR and the Great Northern went to the Middlesbrough coal mine in Merritt. You see. And it was a hot coal, true enough, but it clinkered badly, you know. Well, if you got a big clinker in the firebox of a locomotive, your draft is shut off right now, and many times coming up out of the Coquihalla on the grades there,
Yeah.
they'd have to stop and take out the
Clear out the
take out the
clinkers.
clinkers,
Yeah.
then fire up again and
How did
start
they get
to-
them out? With long iron rods?
Yeah, they had long what they call punching bars,
Mm.
and you'd punch away until you broke up.
Wouldn't that break up the grate sometimes?
No, the grates were pretty heavy,
Oh.
heavy material, real heavy,
Yeah.
heavy material. But and
If you
then
ever get a
too,
chance, John, in Kamloops, down at the park, there's no locomotive. They should climb on that sucker and take a look at it.
Oh, yeah.
So on that sucker.
and then too, they transferred the steam locomotives from coal and started to use bunker fuel, you see, and that really put, you know, the end to like. But there's millions of tons of coal up there left yet.
Well, see, that's why Dominion Bridge. I guess we've got all the materials there because they're talking about putting a steel foundry we have somewhere up there because we've got the other ones that own Blakeburn now. Dominion Bridge. Tech Corporation had it, and then the outfit down the states got it, but right now Dominion Bridge has got it. And they've got
Well,
limestone.
doesn't Imperial Metals too, I believe?
They got a section of it, yeah. But I mean,
Yeah.
that they're a part of Dominion Bridge.
Yeah. Well, originally,
Because see, they got the iron ore up there someplace.
At
They got the
Lodestone.
limestone,
yeah.
and they got the coal, and it's all within an area where they need to make steel.
Hmm.
And right, the last 2 years they've been doing a feasibility study.
Uh-huh.
And I guess if it turns out to be feasible enough to do it, I guess they'll build it.
Well, I have a prospectus of the whole operation, you see, and the figure on the conveyor belt deal from Lodestone, this is the iron ore property, right down to Blakeburn, you see.
Would they build a plant at Blakeburn?
This is what was all in the
Oh,
prospectus.
yeah, yeah.
Uh-huh.
They wouldn't go down
And,
to coal mine.
have a smelter, as a matter of fact, right at
Yeah, so
Blakeburn.
they're talking about building a steel smelter right
and they
there.
would smelt the.
Not in coal mine.
Well, I think Colmont would become a.
That'd
You
be
know,
the shipping
An
terminus.
that's
Yeah.
right. It would be an
Yeah.
important shipping
Oh,
point.
yeah.
You see. Uh huh.
But, see, the
But you
coal mine,
notice
where it's
how-
gonna be the easiest is the cheapest thing to move is going to be the thing that's moving the farthest.
Yeah.
see,
You notice
the
how
old-
Wynne, though, is sort of sidetracking away from these escapades he had as a youth.
Well, John, the only reason he's skidding away from those is because he never had any.
Yes, he did. Look at those
Well,
eyes.
look on the back. You can see where the angel wings are growing already.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
don't see
yeah,
no bumps
yeah,
on his head, but you
yeah.
can see his bumps on his back. You want
Yeah.
the coffee now, right?
Yeah.
Foundry, whatever it might be, that's right on the Blakeburn coal field, right there, and there's millions of tons. As a matter of fact, I guess about four years ago, somewhere in that neighborhood, they were drilling up in the Blakeburn area. They put drill holes down there, and they put one drill hole down and went through 90 feet of
coal?
steam coal.
High
Ninety.
grade coal, yeah.
Steam
Steam.
coal, you see.
Ooh,
And
what a seam.
yeah, I remember when the Wilson Tunnel caught fire, they had to push, to put in another mine. But prior to that time, an old fellow by the name of Jim Corkle, and he was kind of a geologist, you see, and
It's reporting,
he and my dad worked together in the mine. Actually, they used to they were chute builders in the mine, you see, but the management at Blakeburn there knew that this Corkle was somewhat of a geologist, and they put him and my dad prospecting for the number 4 coal mine. And I remember I used to just love Saturdays coming, you see, because I would always take my dad's lunch up to the prospects. They were putting in the railroad that they were going to use for number 4 mine, and they'd driven prospects in the hillside every so far, you see. And I used to enjoy taking my dad's lunch because they would blast in the tunnel just before noon, you see. And during lunchtime, the smoke would have a chance to clear out of the tunnel.
Yeah.
And my dad used to take me in there right up to the face. And I really used to think that
All that stuff crumbled down. And
that was really something.
Yeah.
And I always remember that.
Yeah.
And then just a little bit further on, about a quarter of a mile further on to where they had this prospect, they put in a full-sized haulage tunnel, drove it in several hundred feet. And this was on the level with the railroad track that they were building at the same time. And they found out the coal was running in an opposite direction to what this haulage tunnel, what would have been the haulage tunnel, was going. So they put in the top tunnel, what they call the top tunnel of number 4, quite a lot higher. It would be, the difference in elevation would be approximately 1,000 feet or something like that, you see. Then they came down from the surface to the lower part of the mine, and they had an incline. They had an incline from the top tunnel.
I'll bet you kids found something to do with that.
Oh boy!
What did you do with that incline?
And lots of times the fellows that were looking after the main hoist on the top of the incline, sometimes I guess on Monday morning you'd have the Monday morning blues, you see, and
They had those in those days too?
and they used to send 6 cars, 6 loads down over the incline, you see, and you had to slip the shackle on the 6 cars and put the pin in, you see.
For the brake.
And if he was a little bit bleary-eyed, he would miss that shackle. Well, the slope, the outside incline came down, then it leveled off like that, and then down again to the timber yard below, to the main track down below. And the cars never landed around the main track in any way, shape, or form, because we, as kids, we watched these when they broke away, you see, and they'd come right down on this flat section, and it was just like a ski jump, and they'd sit right around 90 feet in the air. And you can go down into the North Fork today and see there's all kinds of remains down there of these coal cars. And I think they had the incline running for approximately 2 years, and snow was a big factor, and it all had to be hand shoveled, you see. And they had to have quite a snow shoveling crew, to keep the thing open. And then this is when they put in the lower haulage tunnel. And I always think that was a wonderful, I always admired the fellow that was the surveyor, a fellow by the name of Billy Holsworth at that time. And he started give them their line from the lower track, lower haulage track, and then they had to go in on a curve and come into, it was approximately 6 left on the main slope. And the miners started from the inside, and a set of miners, 3 shifts, started from the outside and coming on this curve. And
And they had to meet.
they had to meet, and everybody was betting how much there was going to be out. And you know, there wasn't half an inch in the difference of what they called the footwall when they broke through. And I thought, boy, if ever that was a fine piece of engineering, that was it right there.
Well, like the first tunnel they made in the Rocky Mountains there for CPR, they were half a foot out.
Yeah, that's even more amazing. You know, as a spiral. That's even more
Because they're only half
more
a foot
amazing.
out. They were 6 inches out.
Yeah.
But then,
Yeah.
now back to your misspent childhood up there.
Pardon me?
Back to your misspent childhood up there. Now, what'd you guys do with that incline as kids?
Well, like I say, after 2 years,
They took it out.
yeah.
It was too costly on cars. keep
Costly
it
both on cars and snow shoveling in the
Yeah.
winter time. You see, to keep it. Keep it.
Did they ever give you kids the chores of shoveling? Did you earn a little money shoveling snow as kids, or just around the houses in town? Huh?
No. There was usually enough. Enough manpower to.
You didn't take the jobs of the men.
Well,
That's right.
they
That's
couldn't
right.
either, Johnny, because the Mines Act.
Yeah.
It states that the person has to be 18 years or
That
older.
was it. You had to be 16. I know we had to be 16 to go in the mine at that time, because I remember when I quit school and I tried to get a job, and that was the first thing they asked me, how old was I, you see.
And you were 16.
Yeah, I was 16, you see.
Yeah.
And then I got started in the mine car repair shop there, and
See, you
I
can
worked.
start work at the mine here at 16, but you got to work surface.
Yeah.
What they call service, which is like general services. That you can't work in the pit, and you can't work in the mill. But
Well,
you can
this
work
is
on the
understandable,
outside
you
labor.
know,
Yeah.
because you're not experienced, you know, and it could be a little bit, and the company would be more or less
But you start to figure it out by the time you're 18. You
in a
can
strange
go,
position if
you're-
anything happened to you and they allowed you
you know, you're
to.
sort of fully developed at 18 anyways.
Yeah.
Like you don't grow much faster.
No. And I remember in the 1935, January the 27th, 1935, it snowed all night and snowed all day and then snowed all night again. And well, it got to the point where, you'd shovel the snow,
Uh-huh.
and there was a double track coming into the upper terminal of the tram line, and it got to the point where there was only one track, you see, and even the electric locomotives, taking the cars up to the mine, the snow just piled right up. They couldn't move in any way, shape, or form. And even the tram line, the snow balled up on the cables and the towers on the tram line.
On the pulleys.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it got to the point where if they'd have continued, well, the ice would have built up on those saddles, and she could
Right,
have
and the cable would have
derailed.
fell off.
Yeah.
Huh,
So,
gee. How
we,
much snow fell in those 3 days?
6 feet.
6 feet.
6 feet. Yeah.
Well, you didn't have any place to put the snow then.
No,
I mean, if you
no.
were shoveling, where could you go?
That's right.
You
And
couldn't
then,
throw it.
like where we lived was a place called Lewis Camp, and there were 17 houses down there. And ordinarily, like during the summertime, going from the wash house where we used to change our clothes after work down to home would be 20 minutes. And that night it took me 5 hours to go home. And you see, I got off shift at 11:30, and the fellows, the miners that lived in Lewis Camp, they got off at 4 o'clock. You see, they had broken a trail down home, down the roadway, you see. But when I started to come home, the snow was up to my neck here, and I remember Sam Cunningham had a pair of snowshoes, you see, and I went down and asked Stan if I could borrow
Use 'em, yeah.
his snowshoes. Well, I used to wear felt boots and rubbers over them, and then I had steel heel plates riveted on, you know, with spikes on, you see. So I got these snowshoes, and then when I was starting out from where the barns were, you were mentioning the sign, John.
Mm-hmm.
The,
Population.
that's where the barns
Yeah,
was, right
yeah,
there,
yeah.
yeah. And I thought about these spikes
On
in
the snowshoes.
and I ruined the, you know, the thongs on
webbing,
the
yeah.
snowshoes. So I made my way back down from the barns, back to the shop, and thawed my boots, thawed my rubbers out, and took the rubbers off, you see. And first of all, I thought I had heavy socks on, you know, that I'd take my boots off and try it that way. Well, boy, that was really rough.
Oh.
So anyway, I finally got these rubbers off, and I started home, and I got a quarter of a mile from where the barns was, and I could hear the snow moving, you see, and the whole hillside was starting to move. And so what I did, I just leaned right into the bank. There was a high bank, you see, and I leaned right into the bank and braced myself with the snowshoes, and the whole thing just went right over top of me and on down into the valley
Oh.
down below, you see.
An avalanche.
Yeah, and it took me 5 hours, and I could tell where these avalanches had gone down since the fellows had gone home from the 4 o'clock
the trail
shift,
would be knocked out.
because I could walk right up on top of the,
Oh, yeah,
you
it
know,
was hard. Yeah,
packed,
yeah.
packed really
yeah.
hard, you see.
Yeah.
And there was 3 places that avalanches had come down prior to me going in there. So, yeah, like I say, it took me 5 hours, but I did get home, and it was around it's almost 4 o'clock in the morning before I got home, you see. And I went down with the snowshoes, and the snow was piled up so high, I knew where the house should be, you see.
Oh,
And
gee.
here I snowshoed right onto the top of the
The
roof,
yeah?
you see. And then I saw a hole where the heat
Smoke,
from the
yeah,
chimney,
Yeah.
and I knew I was on the roof. And then I came back down, you see, and scraped my way down into the house. Well, next morning,
Were you supposed to go to work next morning?
no, the
Oh.
tram line, everything
Oh,
was
yeah,
shut
okay.
right down, you
Well,
see.
I would hope so. Yeah.
And then it started to rain during the night,
Oh,
you know.
gee.
It started to rain during the night,
Oh.
and there were 6 of us. We all got together. We all had snowshoes, and then we broke a trail back up to the store to get groceries, you see. Well, when we got there, there was a fella by the name of Joe Del Prato. He used to work in the mine, like during the summer, you know, and also mostly during the winter. And he would get a grub stake and go prospecting for some time during the summer, you see. And
There's not some down there, but
he told us he'd gone over to see this couple. They were a Danish couple, and they had a cabin directly below where we lived at Lewis Camp. You see, it would be about a mile and a quarter down the hillside below. And funny thing, you know, that fall, us kids, we used to go fishing. Well, we weren't kids, we were young fellows working then. And we came up, we'd been fishing one day, and we were talking to this young couple. They would be, I think he was about 26 and she was around 22. And they had a cabin, they built a nice cabin, like in this particular spot. But there was a regular funnel, you know.
All the snow.
Yeah, a regular funnel. And we mentioned the fact, and the irony of this whole thing, over to the right, there was an old cabin there that they could have fixed
Used,
up,
yeah,
you see.
yeah.
So we said to them, do you not think that this is kind of an odd place to be
Risky.
in
yeah.
case we have a heavy snow? And I said, well, we've not had that much snow this last several winters, you see.
Mhm.
And they decided they would stay there, and they had a tunnel directly below their cabin, you see. And they would work in the tunnel, they said, during the winter. Well, during the night, I could tell when I was going home on my snowshoes where this avalanche had started. And it started right from the top, way up, you see, and then gone this mile and a quarter, right down, and this whole funnel, you see, it just drafted everything right in. So this Joe Del Prado, however he got up to the store, I'll never know, but he had apparently gone over to their cabin, and that was their cabin was about a mile and a half from where he was on the North Fork, where his cabin was. And he said, there's no sign of the cabin at all. We can't see any sign of the cabin. So we got a search party. There was 10 of us, and got the doctor. And we all had snowshoes, and we snowshoed down to the where the cabin used to be, you know. And we started to dig around where we thought they were.
Mhm.
And they never knew what hit them. The ridgepole of the cabin came right down, right across both their necks, and broke both their necks. And they were both, when we took the roof off and everything, they were both just laid there, you know, just as though nothing had ever disturbed them. And the clock was broken there, and it was 20 minutes to 2 when the clock broke. So that slide went down around that time, around 20 minutes to 2. And you see, I was saying it took me until about 4 o'clock in the morning to get home, and I could tell where I was snowshoeing
Yeah, right.
that the slide had gone down.
Yeah.
And then did we have a time, we had a toboggan, you see, and ropes and everything. Then the thing was to get the bodies and take them up where this,
Wow, that kind of a slope.
yeah, that kind of a slope, and we had to dig every foothold, you know.
Oh, yeah.
And but we finally did
Got 'em
got them out. And then you see, there was no way the road to Princeton here. There was no way the undertaker could come in. You see, so the fellow by the name of Cy Smith, he was the carpenter at the shop there. He made 2 boxes, and we put the bodies in the 2 boxes. And then the only piece of snow equipment that they had was what Frank Barnes had, and that was just a bulldozer with a bulldozer blade on it, a D8 cat, you see. And he punched a hole down the road to the Colmont Cemetery, or the Granite Creek Cemetery. And there they were buried.
Right up on that little hill there.
That's right. Yeah.
I've seen that cemetery. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was the story on that.
Does anybody take care of that cemetery, or is that just left there?
Well, people who have relatives
Yeah,
there do
yeah.
come in occasionally and keep it up. But you know, it's too bad. They used to have wooden signs on the graves, you see, and all carved with their dates on and everything.
Yeah.
And they've all rotted away and disappeared.
So
you
that
see.
really nobody knows.
No, and whether they have a record or what, I don't know, because in the early 1800s there
There are
were
Chinese and all kinds,
yeah,
all buried there.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
You know why they have fences around the graveyard?
Keep the ghosts out.
People are dying to get in.
Oh, gee. Did you hear that? Did you hear what he said?
Well, sure, that's
Isn't
right.
that
That's
terrible?
right. That's right.
Sacrilegious.
And a lot of people ask me, you know, do I ever go to bed too much? And I said, no way. I said, I don't like to go to bed. I said, because statistics show it's surprising how many people die in bed.
Yeah.
you know.
So stay out of it as much as
And I want to
possible.
keep moving. You know?
Right.
This is the
Yeah.
I think a kid told me that on this
Yeah.
trip.
Yeah.
I forget who it was. Some kid someplace. I don't know. They didn't tell me. I overheard them asking a friend there. Say,
Yeah.
why you got fences around graveyards? She says, I don't know. It's because everybody's dying to get in. I remember to tell that one to John. So I had to remember to tell that one to John.
yeah.
Well, I got a good one while we're talking about jokes. You know the RCAF, the Royal Canadian Air
Oh
Force.
yes, yes.
I just got through reading this beautiful book. Jesus. I got to read this so it's on a tape. This is priceless. It's really good. Anyway, it's about a cemetery, okay?
Uh-huh.
Let's see if I can find it. In wartime, you expect to participate in a funeral parade on a fairly regular basis. One got used to being a pallbearer or to being one of the honor guard or firing party. It was all part of war. Not so in peacetime military service, where deaths were thankfully not so common. A guy could go through his entire career without being chosen for a funeral parade. But wartime or peacetime, they all had the same scenario. And I never was part of one that didn't threaten to burst every blood vessel, strain every sinew, or erode every ounce of composure I owned. For the simple truth was that funerals were funny. As we all know, tragedy and comedy lie just a hair's breadth apart, and the unintentional hilarity, often caused by the participants in funeral dramas, was magnified, like a joke in church, by the very solemnity of the occasion. Trying to maintain a military dignity while your insides were flying apart called for discipline of a very high order indeed. I suspect that part of the reason ladies openly carry handkerchiefs at such affairs is because of their usefulness as gags. Crammed into the mouth at the appropriate time, they successfully stifle screams of laughter while providing an exhibition to the mourners of intense, heart-wrenching grief. So, always beneath the splendid detachment one assumed as a member of the honor guard, paying collective last regards to an unknown comrade, a wonderful silliness took over. And it did not require much to provoke secret mirth. There was the time the group captain lost his shoe in the graveside mud. Or the Montreal funeral parade for the late King George VI, when the bugle froze in the cold, reducing last post to a sort of kazoo solo. But the occasion I remember best happened around 1954 in France, during the glorious early years of the RCAF's Air Division. An officer had been killed in a motor accident near Paris. In the confusion that seized the integrated Allied force which he served, some sort of international compromise was arrived at for the disposal of his remains. Normally it would have been routine, but when the Americans, the Belgians, the British, the Dutch, and the French had all contributed suggestions, the body was embalmed, a rarity for France, and duly disposed in a magnificent oak creation, which had a lead lining, just the final touch. Its empty weight was reputed to be 1,200 pounds, and the deceased had been a big man. So we're talking about a lot of weight there. The cemetery was a beautiful place at the end of a long pea-stone path with a picturesque chapel, framed by tall Lombardy poplars and swaying willows. The path had recently been replenished with stone, making it difficult to walk on. But the scene was an inspiration for our imaginative guard commander. He made good use of the time afforded by an overdue hearse to design a ceremony like no other. Instead of the routine graveside service, he told us with excited enthusiasm, we, in the rifle party, would line the pea-stone path with rifles at the present as the casket was carried the 200 yards to the grave. We would fall in as it passed and follow it to the plot, where we would fire the traditional volleys in salute. The first inkling of trouble was not long in coming. It began with a wheezing and a whooshing sound. Out of the extreme corner of my curious eye, I discovered the source of the unusual noise. 6 flight sergeants, all overweight and degenerate from tax-free liquor and cigarettes, struggled with the heavy casket and the pea stones. By the time the procession reached me, the red-cheeked pallbearers were gasping loudly. Then, crunch! The heavy casket nosed into the path. Almost without hesitation, the 6 honorary pallbearers pitched in to help carry the load. This put 6 men on each side of the casket, each with a couple of fingers through the individual handles. It looked like a tall, staggering centipede as the valiant 12 struggled their way up the path. The close quarters forced upon them was complicated more than somewhat by the tendency of each pallbearer to remove the oxfords of the man in front of him. When we all finally ground to a halt at the graveside, the panting sounded like the baying of 12 larygenic bloodhounds. Fortunately, it drowned out the muffled snickers from those of us who wanted to leap into the bushes to unleash a few well-justified shrieks of laughter. Our mirth was intensified by the air of general concern when the enormous weight of the casket was set down atop the grave. The supports were 2 flimsy-looking boards, and the congregation winced as they sank deeper and deeper, but by some miracle they held. After the padre had said his part, it was our turn to salute the deceased with our gunfire. The command came, "Fire!" And out erupted a staccato roar, not unlike that of a string of large firecrackers. It took about 5 seconds before all the shots, which should have sounded as one, had been fired. Well, almost all the shots. In the stillness that followed, bang went the last rifle. The paper wad that rendered the charge almost harmless hit an airman in the back of the head, twirling his wedge cap end over end across the cemetery. It spun him around on his heels to face us with a silly grin, his eyeballs counter-rotating in their sockets. This was too much. Our stomachs and facial muscles knotted furiously, while the tremendous pressure of laugh suppression soaked our uniforms with perspiration. But we managed it. With some pride I can relate that we never did release that one fantastic laugh out loud that we needed so badly. At least not till we got back into the truck that took us back to the base. I thought that was tremendous.
Really cute, yeah.
You could see the whole thing going on.
You know what? You can turn this off. You know, like on ships,
Yeah.
they got like the different letters for the countries now. You know, like
Mhm.
RCN.
Yeah.
You know what it stands for?
Royal Canadian Navy?
Country is Canada, right?
Yeah.
And then USS,
Yeah.
United States ship, it's the States thing. And then you got RN, which is England for Royal Navy. Eh? I gotta wait for Don to come back because he may know. He may know what it stands for.
Well,
See, he's got all the 3 that he uses. The 4th one, I don't know. It's not known that many times by that
No.
many people, eh?
no.
But he may know it. You know, being a teacher and what he might know what this.
Yeah,
what this
you
stands
probably
for.
will.
You know what the letters stand.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey.
Like when I said RCN, he said Royal Canadian Navy right off the bat. Eh?
Yeah. Yeah.
See, so he probably knows what AME stands for.
Did you say that?
Well, like, okay, you know, you had Canada, you know, RCN, Canada, Royal Canadian Navy, right?
Yeah. U.S. steamship.
And then you got USS, which is the States for United States ship, right?
Yeah,
And RN,
US,
England,
yeah.
for Royal Navy. AMB.